Uh, 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 uh. Excuse me. Ah, so last night in the middle of the night, the little end of my Fitbit popped off. I sheared the plastic connector right
Oh,
off of the thing.
geez.
I was like, well, if I just try to reconnect it with super glue, it will make a huge mess and it won't be very effective. And Jason checked, and it's going to be like a week before another one arrives. I use it for all my alarms and stuff. And I was like, okay, so what I need is something that will work with super glue really well and let this thing stay on my wrist for a week. So I sacrificed a hairband and super glued because, yeah, CA glue loves fabric a lot more than
Hmm.
it likes plastic. So I can even
No,
still I can still do that and stuff. And
that is an advantage of using fabric, is you could still do the pinchy pinchy.
I can still do the pinchy pinchy. And I don't know how it's going to last while I'm sleeping, which is kind of important because of alarms. I think I broke it because I shoved my arm up under my pillow while I'm
Mm.
asleep. And it was just finally like it gave up.
It was like, no, goodbye. Oh, I need to figure out a strap for mine because right now I have just like a stretchy one. I don't have it on right now
Mm.
because it's hot. And when I get sweaty and I'm wearing a nylon strap, it gets gross.
It's another
It just,
advantage to the fabric. It's nice and not gross.
right. I'm like, I need to, I don't know, weave a one or I'm not going to knit small enough to knit one. That's insanity. But
Do like a
like,
friendship bracelet.
that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, just like take the cannibalize the connector from the one I have and do like a friendship bracelet style
Not a bad
situation.
idea. I'm kind of bummed because I bought a 6 or 8 pack of plastic wristbands for my Charge 4, and I haven't even
Mhm.
worn them all because I forget that I have a lot of options and I'll wear one for 6 weeks at a time. And I'm like, I had like black, white, blue, red, gray. I don't remember what, but I do know that a bunch of them just never got worn. And I'm like, they weren't expensive, but it just feels so fucking wasteful. So you Fitbit changing up what charger we need and what wristbands we need for every single iteration of a watch is criminal and you should be ashamed,
Agreed. It's the Apple problem all over again.
right? It's the
It's so dumb.
fucking growth versus sustainability problem all over again, and it's eating the world. It has,
Right.
yeah,
Like I just want just and this is for all my electronics. Give me the innards and let me change out the case as needed and like make everything replaceable. Like all that's all I want.
right. I want to know that I'm not just going to hurl perfectly usable stuff into a fucking landfill.
Yeah. You could put it on one of those like buy nothing groups on Facebook.
I could even just give it to a thrift store because I've seen such things at thrift stores before. If I put it in
Yeah.
like a Ziploc bag with a label that says for Fitbit Charge 4.
You could do that too, yeah. I
Yeah.
was figuring if you put it up on the group, then you'd know for sure it didn't get thrown out because someone would like personally come take it. But
Yep.
either way, um,
I need to have a yard sale or a huge thrift store run like soon. There's so much shit in my house right now that doesn't need to be here. Ah,
that is the benefit of moving. I got rid of a lot of shit.
right. One of many benefits, but there are also drawbacks.
There are
Namely,
also many drawbacks.
that you're moving.
Yeah. Everything about it other than that, basically, and like also being in a place that's better for various reasons. But
Yeah.
um On the good side, do you see my new craft drawers here?
I was admiring that we bought those craft drawers for our Legos years ago. I love them. They're so
I
tidy and so pretty.
I am so excited because I was able to put all of the shit that I couldn't fit in the other drawers up here. Not yarn. I still have to figure out something for the yarn situation. Um,
I watched a reel yesterday. It was a woman. Well, no, it was a stitched. It was a stitched TikTok, and it was some handsome dude in a car, like making pretty faces, very very blue steel faces at the camera, and it said, "If you had me for 24 hours and I couldn't say no, what would we do?" And it was stitched with a woman who interrupted with, "Okay, so we're gonna sort my yarn room. I'm gonna need these shelves moved over here, and I'm gonna need you to help me figure out where this goes." And it just shots of the yarn collection from like it was so epic. And she kept going, and I kept laughing. It was great.
Yep. Yep. Well, and like the thing is, don't even get me started on what the thing is.
What is the thing, Quinn?
The thing is that collecting yarn and knitting are two different hobbies that I just happen to have both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's been a thing. But no, I love these. They were on sale at Michael's for like $30.
Nice.
Cannot complain.
Speaking of places to buy cool things, I just learned that the Good Earth Plant Nursery is closing after 49 years. And it's my
Well, that's too
favorite.
bad.
Right? It's where I got all the plants for my wedding that actually lasted, because the difference between buying at a local nursery and buying at like Lowe's is that the plants are a lot more likely to survive.
Yes.
and they all came back. And well, not the Rudbeckia. The Rudbeckia was cursed.
Well,
But the yarrow and the columbine and the moon lantern plant, whatever, they're all great. And now I'm like, I don't know. I couldn't find online. It didn't say what the final day was. So I'm like, Jason, we're going down there this week. We're buying as much as we can within reason. And he was like, yeah, whose reason?
do not ask such questions.
We'll see. We'll see whose reason. Depends on many things. Speaking of expressing yourself like a Gandalf, yeah.
Yeah. It is your turn to read, and they had just gotten to Bag End and were looking around and being like, wow, this place got super fucked up.
All right.
Also, did I show you this sweater yet?
Yes, it's turning out so pretty.
Thank you. Yes, I am working on the body. I'm on the ribbing, so I'm almost done with the body, and then I will do the sleeves. Which are 3/4 sleeves, so they won't hopefully kill me. Mm-hmm.
I don't suppose you looked up the Lord of the Rings knitting patterns book when I mentioned that it was going to exist, because it's on pre-order.
I did not. Should I?
I mean, unless you totally don't want the surprise ruined, but yeah.
I mean, look. Lord of the Rings knitting book. This is the correct venue for me to be looking at this.
Yeah.
Is it the Tanis Gray one?
I don't know. The unofficial?
Yes, Fellowship of the Knits.
Fellowship of the Knits.
Yeah. Ooh. Okay, but where? Show me more. Show me more about the patterns. Where is my look inside option?
I always just do an image search.
A lot of times they don't really upload that many images because they're like,
buy the book.
No. Buy the book, exactly. You shall not pass.
Exactly. Oh my god. That was the one.
All right, this looks great. Oh my God, there's Eye of Sauron colorwork mittens. Holy shit. Oh, this will be fun.
Yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Oh, there
I
was
want to know
another.
how she does that sweater that looks like elf armor.
Right.
That looks like it'd be fun to knit.
And
Ooh, it's like some kind of tuck situation.
I saw another set of wristers that were like the doors of the Holland Gate, and one side it says "Speak Friend" and the other side it says "And Enter."
Nice. Sweet. Well, yes. Hypothetically, I would love to have that and knit things from it, if such a thing were to occur.
Okay. If it occurs, if we happen to exist in the universe where that comes to pass, we'll do something about it.
Um, what was I going to say about things? And oh, did I tell you about potentially wanting to design a Badger mushroom sweater?
No, but that's adorable.
Well, so
Apparently,
what
it's the
happened was
30th
what
anniversary or something.
20th, I think, but yeah, very upsetting number of years. Um, so I was scrolling through patterns and I saw something that was called the Badger sweater, and I got all excited and I was like, Badger sweater, and then I looked at it and it didn't have badgers on it. It was just like, this pattern is reminiscent of badgers, and I was like, no, stop. What is wrong with you?
Just call it a badger sweater and not give us badgers.
Right? And then they had a mushroom sweater that didn't have mushrooms on it, and I was like, first of all, clearly you need to fix your naming conventions, but secondly, perhaps I should make a badger mushroom sweater.
Really should. You absolutely should. That would be the most adorable thing. You know, I've never seen the original video, at least not to remember it. I know we were quoting it in art school. I could sing the song for you, but I just it never crossed my path, so I never got to see it. I did watch a fair amount of Strong Bad.
Mm-hmm.
I made myself a shirt that said Fahuga Gods.
Yes, I recall. You also made yourself a Trogdor shirt.
Did I make a Trogdor shirt?
I'm pretty sure you made a Trogdor shirt also.
Someone made a Trogdor shirt. Anyway, yeah.
Anyways,
I recognize the historical significance of Badger mushroom, but I have never actually seen the video.
well, it is on YouTube. You could watch it. It is very albino black sheep era internet.
Yes.
Like
good old Flash animation.
Yes, exactly.
Flash animation.
We all miss Flash animation. Why did Flash get murdered other than because it wasn't making enough profit? Goddamn it, capitalism.
Yeah. like listen to me. Capitalism. You're only useful if you're creating products that people want. Otherwise, you're just a parasite.
But if the people don't want the products that we create, then something's wrong with the people.
Clearly. Which is entirely the attitude of one of the most sinister villains Pratchett ever wrote.
Yes, indeed. Well, and it's a weirdly common thing, like even in a not sinister way, but like I run into this at work sometimes where it's like, well, people aren't using the tool the way that it's supposed to be used. And I'm like, well, if absolutely no one is using it right, the problem is the tool, not the people.
Right.
And then I was reading these scientific papers earlier, and it was like, how do we change people's behavior so they share scientific information differently? And I was like, you don't. Figure out how you're going to present the scientific information so people want to share it.
Right? Yeah, you don't change the people. You do not change the authoritarianism wants to change the way people are. Well,
and the paper that I was reading was like, if we subtly nudge people and it was something like if you tell people like if you were trying to make the most money, which story would you publish? And then if you were trying to be the most accurate, which story would you publish? And like nudge them towards accuracy to try and it didn't work.
No. Of course
like
not.
They were like people are more inclined to share studies with positive results. We were trying to get them to share studies with null results, but they didn't want to, no matter what we did. And I
That's
was
because
like,
it's not a story. If there's the null result, it's not a story yet. You have to do something with that. It's half of a story.
right. And it's like, you have to explain, or you have to present a null result as a result. Scientists proved that this does not happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Versus
here is how they
scientists
did
didn't
it.
prove that this does happen, you know?
Right? In an attempt to prove that this does happen, scientists were unsuccessful. They worked really hard and it didn't happen. Therefore, we can all safely reason that that's not a thing. I also, it's not just, I mean, going back to like all products and not scientific papers, the putting of profit above all other considerations makes me constantly want to quote the Mara Wilson Matilda movie. Like, well, of course we're cutting corners and making thinner walled plastic and doing this and that and the other thing to maximize profits. And I just want to be like, but don't people need good stuff? Can't you just make good stuff?
No.
Fuck. One of my old buddies has turned into a Bitcoin bro, and he was trying to get me to invest in, just mentally invest in his worldview. He was like, you were saying you wanted a passive income. And I'm like, I want a passive income from art, from book sales, from providing something beautiful that didn't exist before. It can't be just from taking advantage of a broken system.
Yeah, that's not satisfying.
That's not, no interest in that whatsoever. Thank you.
Well, speaking of broken systems, how's everything going in Hobbiton right now?
Where is that miserable Lotho hiding? Said Mary. They had searched every room and found no living things save rats and mice. Shall we turn on the others to search the sheds? This is worse than Mordor, said Sam. Much worse in a way. It comes home to you, as they say, because it is home, and you remember it before it was all ruined. Yes, this is Mordor, said Frodo. Just one of its works. Saruman was doing its work all the time, even when he thought he was working for himself. And the same with those that Saruman tricked, like Lotho. Merry looked round in dismay and disgust. Let's get out, he said. If I had known all the mischief he had caused, I should have stuffed my pouch down Saruman's throat. No doubt, no doubt. But you did not, and so I am able to welcome you home. There, standing at the door... Bum, bum, bum! There, standing at the door, was Saruman himself, looking well-fed and well-pleased. His eyes gleamed with malice and amusement. Please keep in mind, though, that he's man height, so he crouched in the door with malice and amusement on his face. Maybe he's on his knees so that he could keep his stature. Like, shuffle, 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 shuffle. No doubt.
He's sitting crisscross applesauce, like.
A sudden light broke on Frodo. Sharky! He cried. Saruman laughed.
Sharky!
Bum, bum, bum.
Sounds like the name of a vacuum, honestly.
It does. Saruman laughed. So you have heard the name, have you? All my people used to call me that in Isengard, I believe. A sign of affection, possibly.
Doubt it.
Footnote, it was probably Orcish in origin. Sharku, old man.
I love that he's like, oh yes, that means they like me.
You know, I bet he was being totally sarcastic. These are his fucking minions. They don't have any affection for him. He's like, yes. They scream it at me when I walk past, and then they spit on the ground. Clearly affection.
Good grief, dude.
But evidently you did not expect to see me here. I did not, said Frodo, but I might have guessed. A little mischief in a mean way. Gandalf warned me that you were still capable of it. Quite capable, said Saruman, and more than a little. You made me laugh, you hobbit lordlings, riding along with all those great people, so secure and so pleased with your little selves. You thought you had done very well out of it all, and could now just amble back and have a nice quiet time in the country. Saruman's home could be all wrecked and he could be turned out, but no one could touch yours. Oh no, Gandalf would look after your affairs. Saruman laughed again. Not he. When his tools have done their task, he drops them. But you must go dangling after him, dawdling and talking and riding round twice as far as you needed. Well, thought I, if they're such fools, I will get ahead of them and teach them a lesson. One ill turn deserves another. It would have been a sharper lesson if only you had given me a little more time and more men. Still, I have already done much that you will find it hard to mend or undo in your lives, and it will be pleasant to think of that and set it against my injuries. Well, if that is what you take pleasure in, said Frodo, I pity you. It will be a pleasure in memory only, I fear. Go at once and never return. The hobbits of the villages had seen Saruman come out of one of the huts, and at once they came crowding up to the door of Bag End. When they heard Frodo's command, what was he doing in a hut?
Hutting around? His father always said, when you've been naughty, you gotta go to the hut.
And I've been naughty. I quote that every so often, and no one ever understands me.
Nope. That's a very obscure quote right there.
And at once they came crowding up to the door of Bag End. When they heard Frodo's command, they murmured angrily, Don't let him go. Kill him. He's a villain and a murderer. Kill him. Saruman looked round at their hostile faces and smiled. Kill him, he mocked. Kill him. If you think there are enough of you, my brave hobbits. He drew himself up and stared at them darkly with his black eyes. But do not think that when I lost all my goods, I lost all my power. Whoever strikes me shall be accursed, and if my blood stains the Shire, it shall wither and never again be healed. The hobbits recoiled, but Frodo said, Do not believe him. He has lost all power, save his voice that can still daunt you and deceive you, if you let it. But I will not have him slain. It is useless to meet revenge with revenge. It will heal nothing. Go, Saruman, by the speediest way. Worm, Worm, Saruman called, and out of a nearby hut came Wormtongue, crawling, almost like a dog. To the road again, Worm, said Saruman. These fine fellows and lordlings are turning us adrift again. Come along. Saruman turned to go, and Wormtongue shuffled after him. But even as Saruman passed close to Frodo, a knife flashed in his hand, and he stabbed swiftly. The blade turned on the hidden mailcoat and snapped. A dozen hobbits, led by Sam, leaped forward with a cry and flung the villain to the ground. Sam drew his sword. No, Sam, said Frodo. Do not kill him even now, for he has not hurt me, and in any case I do not wish him to be slain in this evil mood. He was great once, of a noble kind that we should not dare to raise our hands against. He is fallen, and his cure is beyond us, but I would still spare him in the hope that he may find it. Saruman rose to his feet and stared at Frodo. There was a strange look in his eyes of mingled wonder and respect and hatred. Christopher Lee was a very good choice.
He really was.
You have what?
Sorry, my video just got really weird looking. There we
Yeah. Yeah, the levels.
go. I looked up and I was in an 80s music video. Anyways, yes, Christopher Lee was a lovely choice.
Yes. Incidentally, I dreamed the other night in my dream, there was a character who was, he looked like, in my dream, I thought he looks like Benicio del Toro. He didn't look a thing like Benicio del Toro. He looked like the actor that plays other sinister people, and I can't remember his name.
Oh, crap, I know exactly who you're talking about.
His eyes are bigger. He's not as squinty. And he looks very, yeah, character actor, but tends to be fucking evil, right? Javier
Bardem.
Yeah! Javier Bardem was in my dream as he was an assassin who was also Mr. Bean. Like everything that happened was very Mr. Bean. He kept doing things that were like sinister and of ill intent and also incredibly dramatic, and then like a part of his coat would catch fire and then a building fell on him, and like it was weird fucking slapstick. But at one point he set a house on fire, and I realized that the sun was shining right into my eyes. You know, like I woke up from this dream of the flaming outhouse, and there was the sun in my eyes. Yeah, Deadly Mr. Bean. It was he had a spider in his pocket, and at one point he lost it, and he was looking for his missing spider for a while, and it was, once you describe the complicated kind of Rube Goldberg slapstick that goes on, it ceases to have any charm, but it was very bizarrely charming.
I mean, I could see Mr. Bean style assassin being quite successful. It reminds me a bit of did you ever see Bullet Train?
I loved Bullet Train, yes. Just like
yeah, kind of like that.
Only more only he was more the victim of all the weird of the shit rather than being sort of a passive observer of it. But yeah. Bullet Train was absolutely adorable.
I was sad about the brothers dying. That made me very sad.
Well, only one of them died, but yeah, I cried.
No, well, they both do, because the other one was on the train when it crashed.
No, he was in the truck that ran over the girl that was ultimately responsible for his brother's death. He was in the truck.
Huh. Why did I think he died on the train? Anyway, it's been a while since I've seen it. There go the levels again. What is up with this?
I don't know, but I'm trying to remember a line from an 80s song and my mind went blank. But I'm never going to give you up.
Look, you know the rules, and so do I. Maybe it's because my knitting's black.
It might well be.
Although if I hold it up, it seems to get better. No, it's probably because my knitting's black. Yep, there we go. Okay, I'm going to hold the knitting off camera now.
No, hold it up again. I want to see. Test it one more time. Oh. That'll teach you. Oh,
goodness.
You have grown, halfling, he said. Yes, you have grown very much. You are wise and cruel. You have robbed my revenge of sweetness, and now I must go hence in bitterness, in debt to your mercy. I hate it and you. What?
I said, ha, take that, fucker.
Take it. It's some mercy in your face. Well, I go, and I will trouble you no more. But do not expect me to wish you health and long life. You will have neither. But that is not my doing. I merely foretell. He walked away, and the hobbits made a lane for him to pass, but their knuckles whitened as they gripped on their weapons. Wormtongue hesitated and then followed his master. Wormtongue, called Frodo, you need not follow him. I know of no evil you have done to me. You can have rest and food here for a while until you are stronger and can go your own ways. Wormtongue halted and looked back at him, half prepared to stay. Saruman turned. No evil, he cackled. Oh, no. Even when he sneaks out at night, it is only to look at the stars. But did I hear someone ask where poor Lotho is hiding? You know, don't you, Worm? Will you tell them? Wormtongue cowered down and whimpered, No, no. Then I will, said Saruman. Worm killed your chief, poor little fellow, your nice little boss. Didn't you, Worm? Stabbed him in his sleep, I believe. Buried him, I hope, though Worm has been very hungry lately. No, Worm is not really nice. You had better leave him to me. A look of wild hatred came into Wormtongue's red eyes. You told me to. You made me do it, he hissed. Saruman laughed. You do what Sharky says, always, don't you, Worm? Well, now he says, follow. He kicked Wormtongue in the face as he groveled and turned and made off. But at that, something snapped. Suddenly Wormtongue rose up, drawing a hidden knife, and then with a snarl like a dog, he sprang on Saruman's back, jerked his head back, cut his throat, and with a yell ran off down the lane. Before Frodo could recover or speak a word, 3 hobbit bows twanged, and Wormtongue fell, dead. It's interesting to me that they called him Wormtongue definitely in reference to having a dragon-like mode of speech, right? Or energy. Wormtongue was meant to be a reference to dragon. That's his nickname. That's where it comes from. And when Saruman shortens it to Worm, he's not talking about dragons anymore.
He's not. No. I always thought, I didn't realize it was a dragon reference. I thought they called him Wormtongue because his tongue was agile because he was a good speaker.
Well, that might be it too. Almost always when Tolkien talks of worms, he's talking about dragon.
Okay. Well,
dragons. I don't know. I would love to hear a theory about it from someone who knows more than me.
I'm also curious, like, if it is a dragon reference, what kind of speech are dragons supposed to have? Like, is it
very, very skillful and fluid, same as what you said.
Oh, okay. So either way, it means the same thing. It's supposed to be a compliment, but then it's also like a little bit gross and a little foreshadowy, and then it gets shortened to worm, and then it's like, oh, now it's just a straight up insult.
Yeah, right. Oh, I don't know. Tolkien's naming conventions are always they're always explicable, but you have to actually like follow the logic, the what do they call those people who speak lots of languages and find the language fascinating?
Polyglot?
Yeah.
Linguistic?
Polyglot logic. Polyglogic.
Yes, that.
Because otherwise, like, you look at the face of it and you're like, he had 2 villains and he named them Sauron and Saruman. Really? They couldn't have had, like, yeah. You've got 2 girls and they're named Eowyn and Arwen.
Right? Like, come on, bro.
Yeah.
Mind you, I feel that way about a lot of authors who don't have Tolkien's excuses, where I'm like, did you have to give these 2 characters names that start with the same letter? Because I skim, and I definitely was wrong about who said that.
right? Do you see? I recently discovered that Jason, at least, and some of the kids, don't see what is happening in a book in their head when they're reading it. They see the words. The words don't create pictures in their minds.
So I have heard of this. Like different people have different experiences when they're reading. I definitely get pictures in my mind, although they're not as clear as like actual visuals necessarily.
Yeah.
Like it's a little more of a dreamscape kind of situation.
Yeah. My brain's really good at the details on something like a person. And so I get uncomfortable with conversations that go on too long because my brain's just seeing the people standing there like,
Yeah, like having their little video game character idle animation going.
yeah, yeah, like
Yeah.
I need something going on during the conversation. Otherwise, they're just idling and it's frustrating because that's what I see. But what my brain sucks at is spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the Fields of Rohan and it's like a room. My brain can't push it out any further. The Hall of Theoden is like a shed, and I keep having to push the walls of the ceiling out.
I do pretty well with outdoor spaces and like picturing like a path through the trees or something like that. But yeah, indoor spaces, I'll have a sense of layout, but I won't have a sense of detail.
And I can
But then
tell. Yeah,
I get
go
really
ahead.
confused if the layout that's described in the book doesn't match the layout in my brain. They'll be like, and then I turned left and went into the kitchen, and I'm like, the kitchen's on the right. What the fuck are you doing? Like, wait. No, my mental image is wrong. Okay.
My mental image of Green Gables and Avonlea was formed when I was too young to know what a gable was. So yeah, they're all wrong. It's all wrong. It works. It works fine. I just have to like be okay with a door entering the wrong side of the house to get into the kitchen. That yeah, there's have to make some allowances there.
I mean, if we're going to talk about childhood architecture, the first time I read a story that involved a flying buttress, um, I did not have any context for what that was. So I assumed that a buttress was like the female version of a butler, and there were just ladies in uniforms leaning out from the walls.
That is fucking precious. Oh yeah.
I was like, oh yes, the statues of the ladies, and they were all like very like Queen Latifah sized, like because they needed to be sturdy.
I had to support weight. Yeah. Um, there's some books that I've read off periodically since I was a kid, and depending on what house we lived in when I first read it, that's the layout that the house has in the book, and it can get
Interesting.
yeah, like Ramona Quimby. I haven't read it in years, but Ramona Quimby lives in the house on West 3rd Street that you were born in. Mrs. Pigglewiggle is in that general layout too. Yeah.
I don't know if I really have a lot of reference to places that I'm living when I read stuff.
Oh, and Paddington. I read a lot of books in that house. Yeah.
Anyways.
To the dismay of those that stood by, about the body of Saruman a grey mist gathered, and rising slowly to a great height like smoke from a fire, as a pale, shrouded figure it loomed over the hill. For a moment it wavered, looking to the west, but out of the west came a cold wind, and it bent away, and with a sigh dissolved into nothing. Frodo looked down at the body with pity and horror, for as he looked it seemed that long years of death were suddenly revealed in it, and it shrank, and the shriveled face became rags of skin upon a hideous skull. It's kind of weird that Peter Jackson opted not to put that visual in his movies.
That is a really Peter Jackson-y visual.
Yeah. Lifting up the skirt of the dirty cloak that sprawled beside it, he covered it over and turned away. Later on, somebody's going to come by with a wheelbarrow.
That would be incredibly hobbity. Just someone with absolutely zero like sense of drama or anything. Just like,
Dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum.
best clean up this mess, I suppose. Poor
Right.
old fellow.
Yep.
It's
Probably
good riddance,
shouldn't
I
feed-
say.
Mr. Baggins, should we feed these bones to the pigs?
Frodo's up there like, is that what you usually do?
And that's the end of that, said Sam. A nasty end, and I wish I needn't have seen it. But it's a good riddance. And the very last end of the war, I hope, said Merry. I hope so, said Frodo, and sighed. The very last stroke. But to think that it should fall here, at the very door of Bag End. Among all my hopes and fears, at least I never expected that. I shan't call it the end till we've cleared up the mess, said Sam gloomily.
See?
And that'll take a lot of time and work. Yep. Chapter 9, The Grey Havens. But first, the clearing up certainly needed a lot of work, but it took less time than Sam had feared. The day after the battle, Frodo rode to Mishel Delving and released the prisoners from the lock holes. The next day. Not that day. They were tired and they needed tea.
They needed tea. They needed seed cake. They needed to... Someone needed to move the bodies.
Right, okay, so the prisoners waited an extra day, but they didn't know that. Nobody tell them.
Right. Yeah, I mean...
Rode to Mishel Delving and released the prisoners from the lock holes. One of the first that they found was poor Fredegar Bolger. Fatty no longer.
Oh, buddy.
He had been taken when the ruffians smoked out a band of rebels that he led from their hidings up in the Broken Boars by the hills of Skerry. Ah, you would have done better to come with us after all, poor old Fredegar, said Pippin as they carried him out, too weak to walk. He opened an eye and tried gallantly to smile. Who's this young giant with the loud voice? He whispered. Not little Pippin. What's your size in hats now? No one more prosaic than a hobbit. Then there was...
So hobbits have standardized hat sizes?
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
What they don't have a lot of is shoes.
I mean, indeed, that is true. If you don't have to worry about making shoes, you have a lot more time to standardize your hats.
It's true. Although the only hat we've seen in all of our experiences in the Shire thus far was that weird shapeless bag thing that the fox stole from Sam back at the beginning. I mean, he didn't canonically steal it, but we don't hear about it anymore, so yeah. Do you remember this? It was 3 years ago, I know, but...
I do, and now I'm sitting here like, I guess that is the only hat we've ever heard about up to this point.
And I don't think
Well,
that one
alright.
had a size. It was probably one of your one size doesn't fit anybody.
Yes, I would assume.
Then there was Lobelia. Poor thing, she looked very old and thin when they rescued her from a dark and narrow cell. She insisted on hobbling out on her own feet, and she had such a welcome, and there was such clapping and cheering when she appeared, leaning on Frodo's arm but still clutching her umbrella, that she was quite touched and drove away in tears. She had never in her life been popular before, but she was crushed by the news of Lotho's murder, and she would not return to Bag End. She gave it back to Frodo and went to her own people, the Bracegirdles of Hardbottle. When the poor creature died next spring, she was, after all, more than 100 years old, Frodo was surprised and much moved. She had left all that remained of her money and of Lotho's for him to use in helping hobbits made homeless by the Troubles. So that feud was ended. I mean, properly speaking, it ended because they were all dead, but
I mean, that too, but a hobbit could still hold a grudge if they wanted to.
not Frodo. He's too Buddhist.
That's true. Frodo doesn't hold grudges for shit.
No, no. But if grudges, if feuds existed in an ethereal state, just nebulously in the ether, this one's gone.
Yes.
Yeah. Old Will Whitfoot had been in the lockholes longer than any, and though he had perhaps been treated less harshly than some, he needed a lot of feeding up before he could look the part of mayor. So Frodo agreed to act as his deputy until Mr. Whitfoot was in shape again. The only thing that he did as deputy mayor was to reduce the sheriffs to their proper functions and numbers. The task of hunting out the last remnants of the ruffians was left to Merry and Pippin, and it was soon done. The southern gangs, after hearing the news of the Battle of Bywater, fled out of the land and offered little resistance to the Thane. Before the year's end, the few survivors were rounded up in the woods, and those that surrendered were shown to the borders. And those that didn't were fed to the pigs.
Yep.
Yep. Meanwhile, what's that?
Nobody told Frodo about it because they knew he'd be upset.
He would be upset. But you gotta fatten your bacon somehow.
It's true.
Meanwhile, the labor of repair went on apace, and Sam was kept very busy. Hobbits can work like bees when the mood and the need comes on them. Now there were thousands of willing hands of all ages, from the small but nimble ones of the hobbit lads and lasses to the well-worn and horny ones of the gaffers and gammers. Before Yule not a brick was left standing of the new sheriff houses or of anything that had been built by Sharkey's men. But the bricks were used to repair many an old hole to make it snugger and drier. Great stores of goods and food and beer were found that had been hidden away by the ruffians in sheds and barns and deserted holes, and especially in the tunnels at Micheldelving and in the old quarries at Skerry, so that there was a great deal better cheer at Yule than anyone had hoped for. One of the first things done in Hobbiton, before even the removal of the new mill, was the clearing of the hill and Bag End, and the restoration of Bagshot Row. The front of the new sandpit was all levelled and made into a large sheltered garden, and new holes were dug in the southward face, back into the hill, and they were lined with brick. The gaffer was restored to number 3, and he said often, and did not care who heard it, "It's an ill wind as blows nobody no good, as I've always said. All's well as ends better." There was some discussion of the name that the new row should be given. Battle Gardens was thought of, or Better Smiles. But after a while, in sensible hobbit fashion, it was just called New Row. It was a purely Bywater joke to refer to it as Sharkey's End. And now we're sitting on 8, so I may as well give it a
Just
rest.
slipped over to 8. The timing was perfect.
Perfect! Ah, oh, Sharkey's End. Oh. I want to visit the Shire 200 years later and hear all about the mythical characters of Shire lore, like Mad Baggins. You know that Mad Baggins fought Sharkey at some point in their local.
I would imagine that they kind of conflated Frodo and Bilbo, and so Mad Baggins just became both of them.
Right.
Mad Baggins went away and became rich, and then he went away again and came back as a soldier and fought Sharkey, who had torn down the Shire,
and he was immortal, and you could tell because when Sharkey tried to stab him, he failed.
Yeah, Sharkey tried to stab him and the blade broke because Mad Baggins had made a deal with a fairy that no weapon forged by mortals could harm him.
And the fairy helped Mad Baggins because there was some fairy blood in the Tooks, and Mad Baggins was a scion of the Took clan. So when he went off into the wilderness, his the other branch of the family found him and granted him this awesome immortality and shit.
And whenever anybody said like is in a situation that could have been like a bad injury, but they get out of it, they say that's you've got Mad Baggins' luck.
I'm sorry, you thinged.
Word. So I was saying, whenever anyone's in a situation that could have ended badly, but they get out of it, they say you've got Mad Baggins' luck.
Oh, and when you want to convince kids to stay away from the dangerous cliff or eat all the vegetables or anything, you say, now Wormy's gonna get you if you don't, you know, because
Hmm.
Wormtongue sneaks into people's rooms and stabs them while they're sleeping if they misbehave, and then he eats
Yeah, that definitely would get put in the legend somewhere.
them. Yeah. Yeah, he's totally Wormtongue has got to be the Krampus of
Hmm.
of the Shire. Give it a couple hundred years of mixing up history with myth, and yeah, I'll pop you in a sack to eat you later.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that extremely edifying note, oh, I will see you next week.
Okay, I love you.
I love you too.
Cuidado.
Te llamas.